For why or? Why in another dark or in the same? And whose voice is asking this and answers? His soever who devises it all. In the same dark as his creature or in another, for company. Who asks in the end? Who asks? And in the end answers as above, and adds long after to himself, unless another still. Nowhere to be found, nowhere to be sought. The unthinkable last of all, unnameable, last person, I, quick, leave him. The work of Samuel Beckett has, for more than 50 years, set itself the task of reimagining a still unnameable last person, I, by questioning all that would lend it value as a coherent unity. Characters and voices in extreme situations of solitude seem to await silence or death, but in fact seldom come to rest and even more rarely stop talking. Persistent in their desire for something not yet said or not yet done. Superficially, Beckett's work resembles that variety of modernism initiated by de Sade, which exacts from its culture extreme instances of rational form in order to parody tacit contradictions. But unlike the Sadean libertine, who in self-satisfied egoism is content to catalog the limits of his world, Beckett admits that the limits of his culture are not the limits of possibility. An unfortunate consequence of the Sadean method is that it is often only capable of replicating, in inverted form, the authority that it had intended to criticize, maintaining as it does a theological notion of center or hierarchy, which appropriates certainty for its blasphemy and authority for the blasphemous subject. The difference of Beckett is that in place of this closed world, which has been invented in order to be mastered, he imagines an uncertain one, the residence of an even less certain subjectivity.
I have a small phonograph in my room, and I play it when I want to exercise in order to keep warm. Well, when it gets to be very cold in my room, this phonograph won't work. Something goes wrong inside. The grease freezes, and the wheels won't turn, and I can't have music while I am bending and swinging my arms. I've got to do it without music. It's much more pleasant to exercise with jazz, but when it is very cold, the phonograph won't work and I am in a hell of a fix. I have been in here since 8 o'clock this morning, and it is now 4:45, and I am in a hell of a mess. I hate to let a day go by without doing something about it, without saying something. And all day I have been in here with my books that I never read, trying to get started, and I haven't gotten anywhere. Most of the time I have been walking up and down the room. 2 steps in any direction brings you to a wall, and bending and kicking and swinging my arms. That's practically all I have been doing. I tried the phonograph a half dozen times to see if the temperature hadn't gone up a little, but it hadn't, and the phonograph wouldn't play music.
My father died behind a well-made wooden bathroom door. It is a 3-panel door. Each panel is nearly square, 21 inches wide by 19 inches high. From edge to edge, the door is 28 inches wide. All the original doors in the house are the same, grids of 3 rectangles surrounded by a raised framework. Painted white as they are now, each square of each door is molded in the light by a right angle of shadow. The doors in my house are abstract and ordinary. The bathroom door is now 47 years old. My father was 69.
Okay, 90 seconds. Oh, to discern the structure of this bliss, or instead to stay today remiss. Exalted as this predicament sounds, still vulgar, it pants at my feet like a certain unwalkable dog that used to roll over on its back and piss itself every time I came through the front door. Thankfully, gone forever is the little stink that had amassed at my welcome mat, but lingering still is a zeal of other unlovable, unleashable doggy dilemmas. Meaning lingering still is a will, or maybe a won't. Either I will tell a story or I won't. I won't. And I used to say, or write rather privately and pathetically to myself, that the curse of the heavy-headed lazy one is the occasional late night, which must be spent purging some memorable chunks, hearty and indigestible, of a life that seems unendurable. Some of those among us let their quote-unquote brilliance trickle out infrequently and leave less words on pages than stains on T-shirts. You know those stains in the crease of the arm, the deadest giveaways to wasted efforts, each intention laid to rest in a set of bloodstains, sort of charming in retrospect, but rather hideous in their tinniness, in their haphazardness. Some of those among us aspired to be higher, but have sat so long in a state so low with nowhere to go but in. And in this, there's a lot to do, like A, drugs, B, argue, C, alphabetize the book collection, or D, all of the above. And now, a reminisced, for instance, loudly, more winely than defiant, I warbled at him. Can't we just have a bad paperback section? A shelf or shelves somewhere where I can store my weathered copy of The Fountainhead? He was reorganizing the military section, which stood apart from the literature rather distinctly in a fancier bookcase, which used to store my grandmother's collection of miniature dogs somewhere near Olympic and 10th, which doesn't exist anymore because of the 10 freeway.
Maupassant often lunched at the restaurant in the tower, though he didn't care much for the food. It's the only place in Paris, he used to say, where I don't have to see it. Wherever the season, through mist and cloud, on overcast days or in sunshine, in rain, wherever you are, whatever the landscape of roofs, domes, or branches separating you from it, the tower is there.
In the illusory babels of language, an artist might advance specifically to get lost, and to intoxicate himself in dizzying syntaxes, seeking odd intersections of meaning, strange corridors of history, unexpected echoes, unknown humours or voids of knowledge. But this quest is risky, full of bottomless fictions and endless architectures and counter-architectures. At the end, if there is an end, are perhaps only meaningless reverberations. The following is a mirror structure built of macro and micro orders. Reflections, critical Laputans, and dangerous stairways of words, a shaky edifice of fictions that hangs over inverse syntactical arrangements. Coherences that vanish into quasi-exactitudes and sublunary and translunary principles. Here language covers rather than discovers. It cites and situations. Wait, I'm going to go back a bit. And sublunary and translunary principles. Here language covers rather than discovers its sites and situations. Here language closes rather than discloses doors to utilitarian interpretations and explanations. The language of the artists and critics referred to in this article becomes paradigmatic reflections in a looking-glass babel that is fabricated, according to Pascal's remark, nature is an infinite sphere whose centre is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. The entire article may be viewed as a variation on that much misused remark, or as a monstrous museum constructed out of multifaceted surfaces that refer not to one subject, but to many subjects within a single building of words. A brick equals a word. A sentence equals a room. A paragraph equals a floor of rooms, etc. Or, language becomes an infinite museum, whose centre is everywhere and whose limits are nowhere.
Kenneth Lockheed was seriously considering an informal offer to join the faculty at Bennington College in Vermont, where Noland, Olitsky, and Clement Greenberg were visiting instructors. Noland had purchased Robert Frost's farm in South Shaftesbury in 1963. David Smith's studio at Bolton Landing was 90 minutes away. Anthony Caro had also moved to Bennington. But Lockheed had settled into Winnipeg with his family and begun to plan a new house and studio designed by Gustavo de Rosa at 634 Kilkenny Drive in the woods by the river. On June 18, 1965, he wrote to Greenberg, "We still don't know if we can get down east this year. Our decision to stay in Winnipeg for an indefinite period of time is marked with a plan to build a home near the university that will serve me well and the domestic needs, etc. of the family. We hired a local architect to build us a modest home on a very attractive lot on the riverbank. With plenty of trees, it will provide a retreat for simple living in the woods by the river, with plenty of birds." Greenberg's postcard reply was dated June 26. "I hope you're not letting this kind of business interfere with your painting. All sorts of things could do that, including your new house, the slides of whose maquette looks more than merely interesting. Do I have to tell you that?"
The Life and Opinions of Tristram Shandy, Gentleman. A dedication to a great man, having, a priori, intended to dedicate the moors of my Uncle Toby to Mr. XXX, I see more reasons, a posteriori, for doing it to Lord XXXXXX. I should lament from my soul if this exposed me to the jealousy of their reverences, because a posteriori in court Latin signifies the kissing hands for preferment, or anything else in order to get it. In my opinion of Lord XXXX is neither better nor worse than it was of Mr. XXX. Honors, like impressions upon a coin, may give an ideal and local value to a bit of base metal, but gold and silver will pass all the world over without any other recommendation than their own weight. The same goodwill that made me think of offering up half an hour's amusement to Mr. XXX, when out of place, operates more forcibly at the present, as half an hour's amusement will be more serviceable and refreshing after labor and sorrow than after a philosophical repast. Nothing is so perfectly amusing as a total change of ideas. No ideas are totally different as to those ministers and innocent lovers, for which reason, when I come to talk to statesmen and patriots and set such marks upon them as will prevent confusion and mistakes concerning them for the future, I propose to dedicate that volume to some gentle shepherd, whose thoughts proud science never taught us to stray, far as the statesman's walk or patriot's way, yet simple nature to his hopes had given, out of a cloud-capped head a humbler heaven, some untamed world in depth of wood embraced, some happier island in the watery waste, and where admitted to that equal sky his faithful dog should bear him company. In a word, by thus introducing an entire new set of objects to his imagination, I shall unavoidably give a diversion to his passionate and lovesick contemplations. In the meantime, I am the author.
The backdrop against which art now stands out is a particular state of society. What an installation, a performance, a concept, or a mediated image can do is to mark a possible or real shift with respect to the laws, the customs, the measures, the mores, the technical and organizational devices that define how we must behave and how we may relate to each other at a given time and in a given place. What we look for in art is a different way to live, a fresh chance at coexistence. How does that chance come to be? Expression unleashes affect, and affect is what touches. Presence, gesture, and speech transform the quality of contact between people. They create both breaks and junctions. And the expressive techniques of art are able to multiply those immediate changes along 1,000 pathways of the mind and the senses. An artistic event does not need an objective judge. You know it has happened when you can bring something else into existence in its wake. Artistic activism is affectivism. It opens up expanding territories. These territories are occupied by the sharing of a double difference, a split from the private self in which each person was formally enclosed, and from the social order which imposed that particular type of privacy or privation. Every social movement, every shift in the geography of the heart, and revolution in the balance of the senses needs its aesthetics, its grammar, its science, and its legalisms, which means that every new territory needs artists, technicians, intellectuals, universities. But the problem is the expert bodies that already exist are fortresses defending themselves against other fortresses.
There are those who watch a football game swaying back and forth, singing, shouting, screaming, as one, an audience at times to their own performance. In return, the players also audience the collective acclamation of the mass. There is the phenomenon in some countries of the performers clapping the audience, whilst simultaneously the audience claps the performers. Audiencing a rock group, the heart's pulse in the audience is one, at one with the performers. The performers respond to the needs of the audience fulfills the needs of the performers. An event is part of an event, witnessing an event. The event may in turn witness the event.
The painting had a lengthy written inscription in Latin, from which we glean its scientific objective, the representation of an anomalous female anatomy. The inscription tells us that the painting portrays a great wonder of nature, in quotation, a woman from the town of Accumoli in the kingdom of Naples, the mother of 3 sons, who at the age of 37 had grown a beard as long as that of a man. The portrait is uncanny. Magdalena Ventura, with a long beard, is shown in the act of offering her breast to her son. The contrast between her naked female breast and her bearded male face is rather disconcerting, bordering as it does on the psychoanalytic terrain of fear of castration and fetishization. A predecessor of Ribera's rendering is the portrait of Brigida del Rio by Juan Sánchez Cotan, the bearded woman of Panorama, 1590s. Although a much more timid representation, this portrait also testifies to a cultural interest in anatomical anomalies and in the female body as the site of scientific discourse. The representation of quotation, I know, but all the same, end quotation. The fetishistic perversion, which as a topos informed the scientific and aesthetic discourse on the female body, crossed over into the popular domain. In Naples, the bearded woman became a popular form of theater, the spectacle replaced by cinema.
Dearest, dearest, I dreamt about you last night. It was wonderful. The wind was up and the light was low. We were together on a great plain somewhere, probably the West, Wyoming maybe. We were so in love. You were chasing deer as they came down from the hills. I was sitting on a large red rock eating figs. The deer were teasing you with their swift moves and jumps, taunting you to step like them in perfect chorus, a hilarious act from some silent musical. I laughed and laughed till it hurt. We both seemed so clumsy in their presence. Then it started to rain, and we started to run. But there was no cover, and we darted back and forth in the brush, just the 2 of us now, searching, growing frantic, but laughing. I remember the sound of us laughing the whole time. Then the sky suddenly felt dark, as if night got impatient, and the stars filled the sky and began, maybe slowly, maybe quickly, to descend. As they grew closer, they started to join, forming an illustrious blanket of glitter above us, keeping us dry and warm and radiant while the wet and the cold and the dark surrounded. Then I was awake. I sensed you'd been here. I was confused and uncertain, but I knew it was you, and I wanted to stop you, this ghost of you, this part of you that keeps appearing, from dissolving into the dark so heartlessly. I felt sure at first that I could find my way to you, that I could make you stay. But the night overtook, and the dream, as always, subsided.
When I woke again, this time to morning, I felt oddly refreshed, as I still do even now, hours later. It wasn't just seeing you, hearing the sound of you laugh and your voice. It is almost as if I somehow still feel you, not just on my skin, but in my blood, on my thoughts. It's as if when you touched me in the dream, as we ran for shelter and you put your hand on my arm, something coursed through me, something that remains, still this very second, some kind of wonderful ionic force that breathes somewhere within me. It envelops and fills me, and I'm alive with you again. I will move carefully today, coveting this funny, lovely presence of you. I'll glide through every minute more slowly, more buoyantly, and I will do all I can to make my dear, sweet you last just as long as I can. Forever, X.
But is this what was asked of me on this occasion? Supposedly I'm contributing a paper on art and social life. So far as I understand it, the question before us is, to what extent do the two belong together? Before determining just how much art should or should not infringe on social life, let us remember that social life never infringes on art. In fact, social life doesn't give a damn about art. Social life, as I see it, is a sort of vast digestive system that chews up whatever finds its way into its mouth. This vast appetite can swallow a Botticelli at a gulp, with a voraciousness frightening to everyone but a zoo custodian. But why is art so masochistic, so looking for punishment? Why is it so anxious to find its way into this huge maw? To speak more seriously, we do recognize that the trend for many gifted composers right now is toward more and more of this infringement. There is, in fact, a movement afoot to make an art that sabotages its own complacency, or rather, that sabotages its own service to a complacent society. This idea is attractive to the politically oriented or the socially oriented artist, whether it be a No-No or a John Cage, though it will naturally be seen from different angles by two such very different personalities. No-No, who finds the social situation intolerable, wants art to change it. John Cage, who finds art intolerable, wants the social situation to change it. Both are trying to bridge the gulf, the distance between the two. The modern artist, whose tendency is to use everything at his disposal, without any truly personal contribution, naturally reaches for salvation toward whatever he feels is real. But how can you bridge what is real with what is only a metaphor? Art is only a metaphor. It is solely the personal contribution, that nameless sensation mentioned earlier, that can give the artist those rare moments when art becomes its own deliverance.
No, to speak frankly, I don't find it so overpowering, said Hans Castorp. Where are the glaciers and the snow peaks and the gigantic heights you hear about? These things aren't very high, it seems to me. Oh, yes, they are, answered Joachim. You can see the tree line almost everywhere. It's very sharply defined. The fir trees leave off, and after that there's absolutely nothing but bare rock. And up there to the right of the Schwarzhorn, that tooth-shaped peak, there is a glacier. Can't you see the blue? It's not very large, but it is a glacier right enough. The Scaletta, Piz Michel and Tinsenhorn in the notch. You can't see them from here. Have snow all the year round. Eternal snow, said Hans Castorp. Eternal snow, if you like. Yes, that's all very high. But we are frightfully high ourselves. 1,600 meters above sea level. That's why the peaks don't seem any higher. Yes, what a climate that was. I was scared to death, I can tell you. 1,600 meters, that's over 5,000 feet as I reckon it. I've never been so high up in my life. And Hans Castorp took a deep, experimental breath of the strange air. It was fresh, and that was all. It had no perfume, no content, no humidity. It breathed in easily, and held him for no associations. And held for him no associations. Wonderful air, he remarked politely. Yes, the atmosphere is famous, but the place doesn't look its best tonight. Sometimes it makes a much better impression, especially when there is snow. But you can get sick of looking at it. All of us up here are frightfully fed up, you can't imagine, said Joachim, and twisted his mouth in an expression of disgust that was as unlike him as the shoulder shrug. It looked irritable, disproportionate.